I have an older brother. I think you've heard me talk about him a little bit. I'm the nice one. Um, Sometimes having family in the audience isn't a good thing. They know the stories and they know the truth, but that's the truth. I'm the good one. I'm the nice one. But Jeff and I, we used to fight like cats and dogs. He's 3.5 years older than me, and he pounded on me quite a bit growing up. We would fight over nothing. We would fight over everything. But yet there was times that we were like each other's best friends. You know, those kind of situations. How brothers can be, how siblings can be. We would have great times, and sometimes those great times would instantly turn into something where now we're fighting about it. But we used to get in pushing matches. We got in fist fights. You name it, we did it. The last fight we ever got into was over a baseball. It was mine. He had it. I wanted it. And we were in the living room of the house, and it started out in the living room, and then went through the living room, and then went out into the dining room, and it got almost to the kitchen before Dad ended the fight. We would fight. I mean, when I say fight, it's not just nitpicking. I mean, we had fist fights over stuff, and that was the last fight we ever had because I gotten to the point I was old enough that he didn't beat me anymore. I was 17, I think. And I played football and wrestled, and I worked out quite a bit. I know it doesn't look like it now. But I was not weak anymore, and he didn't win. And that was the last fight we ever had. I don't know if that's why it was the last fight we ever had, but that was the last fight we ever had was over a baseball. Isn't that dumb? You don't have to agree. But we used to fight, and brothers and sisters do that sometimes. Chris and I, some of you know Chris, she had to go see a grandchild. A grandchild was born this weekend, so she had to go see a grandchild. So she's not here. But we would fight. Her and Jeff would fight some, but nothing like Jeff and I. But we ended up growing and changing, and our relationship changed. We knew we loved each other, but it was just kind of one of those weird things that we loved each other, yet there was this love-hate relationship that we had with each other. But he ended up being the best man in my wedding. I was in his wedding, and we're friends to this day. We've worked together. He's hired me to help him build houses and things, and so things changed over time. But growing up, it was cats and dogs. We kept Mom and Dad on edge. Chris was always had to be the go-between. She was the buffer. You remember riding the hump? Some of you, if you're old enough, you remember riding the hump, the back seat. We didn't have the vans. We didn't have the bigger vehicles. It was a sedan, four-door car. Jeff always sat behind Dad. That was probably so he could reach him, and smack. Chris had to sit in the middle, and I always sat on this side. That was just the way we always rode. And Chris hated it because she always had to ride the hump, and she always had to sit between us to keep us from getting at each other. That's brothers and sisters. Love can fight, and sometimes if there's a fine line sometimes between love and hate. You can love so hard that you're really not sure. When they upset you, when they irritate you, they can really tick you off, and you're not sure if you still love them anymore. But this choice that we have, that we choose to love each other. Love is an interesting thing. Love as a verb is an interesting thing. How we show love to one another, how we do love. When you look at the Bible, a lot of times love is either a verb or it's a noun. It either describes who a person is or describes what they do. It either describes who God is or what God is doing. So it's either a verb or a noun. And that's typically how we express love, how we think about love is an action. Love is something we do for someone else. I've known many people that we can kind of confuse love sometimes. We can kind of confuse, how do I love this person? How do I really show this person love? How do I receive love? How do I express it to somebody appropriately? We know that many marriages, I've known people that they found the love of their life 6 times. I'm like, I thought that person was the love of your life. And I thought This, like, oh, so you're on to something else, you're on to someone else. There's this feeling that kind of comes and goes sometimes, right, with love. Love is a choice, but it's also a feeling. And so love can be confusing sometimes. I've told you before, there was one girl I thought I was falling in love with, and I told her so, and she said, yeah, I think we need to break up. Okay, all right, so I'm wrong, or we're missing something here. Love can be really confusing. And how we feel about one another, how we react to something that somebody else has done or something that somebody else has said, this verb, this noun, this description of who we are can be really confusing. This whole idea that we've been talking about the last couple weeks, we're talking about today, is the adjectives that describe the Christian life, the adjective that should describe who you are as a follower of Christ. I'm not an English guy. If you talk to me very long, you know that. If I Becky says she knows that when I stand up here and talk, God must be helping because I make sense. Because most of the time I don't. And English was never my strong suit, and my dad can testify to that with report cards and phone calls from teachers. But an adjective is simple. An adjective is a word that describes a noun. So your name, who you are, an adjective can describe who you are. It's not what you do, it's who you are. So it's describing you. That's what a simple definition of an adjective. It's a word that describes a noun. So as a Christian is a noun. What describes your Christian life? What are words that we would use to say, well, I'm a Christian, and this is what it means that I'm a Christian. This describes my behavior. This describes my attitude. This describes my action. This describes me as a Christian. Well, Peter gives several examples of that in 1 Peter chapter 3. 1 Peter chapter 3, we've read that the last couple weeks. We're going to read it again. 1 Peter chapter 3. Take a look at it with me. There are 5 adjectives that he lists here about what a Christian should be. If you have your Bibles, I want to encourage you, if you haven't read them, if you haven't done this before, I want you to highlight these 5 words. I want you to underline them, circle them, number them, whatever, so that you can see what it means to be a follower of Jesus. What should describe your life? Peter writes this, finally, all of you should be of one mind. There's number 1. Sympathize with each other. Sympathize, number 2. Love each other. That's where we are today. As brothers and sisters. 4. Be tender-hearted. And keep a 5. Humble attitude. Those are the 5 adjectives. Don't repay evil for evil. Don't retaliate with insults when people insult you. Instead, pay them back with a blessing. That is what God has called you to do, and He will bless you for it. For the Scriptures say, if you want to enjoy life and see many happy days, keep your tongue from speaking evil and your lips from telling lies. Turn away from evil and do good. Search for peace and work to maintain it. The eyes of the Lord watch over those who do right, and His ears are open to their prayers, but the Lord turns His face against those who do evil. This whole idea of love, we live in a society and a culture, I think it goes back to the beginning of time where Satan has tried to twist and distort what love means and what it really is. Have you ever heard the saying, oh, just follow your heart? I think that's one of the dumbest pieces of advice you can be given. I mean, because our hearts change, don't they? Our feelings change. Kind of what we're passionate about changes. Hobbies change. We say, well, just follow your heart. And that's why people end up saying, well, I found the love of my life 6 times. Because, well, my heart changed. Well, my heart, things got a little rough. And so it's not worth it anymore, so I'm going to move on to this. Well, then that got a little rough, and then, we just keep moving on. Anybody know what Jeremiah chapter 17, I think it's verse 9 says? It's on the screen. Jeremiah 17:9. Wow, Tim, you got a gold star today. The heart, look at that. The heart is the most deceitful of all things and desperately wicked. Who really knows how bad it is? You want to follow your heart? It'll lead you right into trouble. I mean, look at the language that Jeremiah uses here. It's some incredibly strong language. It is desperately wicked, deceitful of all things. Who really knows how bad it is? And we want to follow your heart. If anybody ever tells you to follow your heart, tell them, okay, I'm never going to get advice from you ever again about anything. The heart, the emotion that we attach to love can really deceive us and can really lead us astray. Because we think we feel a certain way, but that's not necessarily what love is. There's this choice that goes with love. It's not just a feeling. It's both. But we emphasize the feelings and emotions so much over anything else, and so we love this and then we love that, and we misuse love by saying, man, I love pizza. And I do. And I love tacos. And I love, a greasy bacon cheeseburger. There's Becky, and then there's bacon cheeseburgers. But we talk about love that way in those terms that are like, really, that's love? I mean, but that's the way we live. That's the world we live in. And the Bible talks about something different, and it shows love that is something different. What was unique about the first adjective that Peter used, the one mind? What was unique about that? You had this quiz last week, and you failed it last week, too. It's the only time that word was used, right? The only time that Greek word is used in the New Testament. What was unique about the word sympathize? Same thing. The only time in the whole New Testament that word was used. Guess what's unique about this word love? Only time it's used in the New Testament. The only time it's used in the New Testament, Peter says, love as brothers and sisters. Love each other as brothers and sisters. This adjective that is supposed to describe the noun. He's talking to believers. Remember, Peter is writing to the church. He's writing to people who say they're a follower of Jesus, and he's saying these five things, this is something that should describe who you are. That you should love as brothers and sisters. Now, if I would step back and I would look at this and I say, well, my brother and I, we fought like cats and dogs. You want me to love? I mean, please don't love me that way. Don't walk up and slug me. Because that's sometimes what Jeff would do. I mean, I didn't do anything. He just walked by in a room and he just punched me. I couldn't do anything about it. I was little enough. I couldn't do anything about it. He just punched me in the arm or whatever. Please don't love me that way. But it says love as brothers and sisters. It's the only time in the whole New Testament that it's used that way. What is Peter trying to tell us? I think it's stay in the fight. We live in going back probably, 75 years, 100 years. We started as a culture, started as a country, started to be more transient. We started to move more frequently. We didn't develop those roots in our communities and our families. We didn't have the family farm, the family house that was passed from generation to generation to generation. We aren't from really anywhere. People ask me where I'm from, and I'm not really sure where to say I'm from. I kind of grew up in Indiana, but then we lived for a lot of years up here in Michigan, and I was born in down by Edwardsburg, Michigan. We moved around a fair amount, not frequently, but a little bit. So I don't have, where am I from? That's kind of our society. That we move and we change, and it happens in the church too, where it's easy to just move on. It's easy to church shop. I've heard that pastors can tick people off. And some people can leave a church because of something the pastor says. I mean, not that they're ever wrong. They're never wrong. But, it can happen. Or somebody else might say something in a church that ticks you off, and I'm going to find another church. I'm going to go do something else. Well, the church doesn't offer this, and so I'm going to go find a church that will offer what I want and meet my needs and serve me. The problem is we got the focus on the wrong thing. We got the emphasis in the wrong place. That love isn't about me. When we love somebody, when we express the verb, when we express love, It's about the object of it, not the giver of it. And we often get that mistaken, where we think love is about me and you got to love me my way. It's kind of weird and it's kind of backwards that we really find fulfillment as we give this away and as we find in somebody else and in something else. Yes, we need love. Yes, we need it expressed to us. Yes, we need, there's an old book that was called, used the analogy of a gas tank. We all have a love tank, and that love tank needs to be filled, and only other people can fill that tank in us. And our love tanks can run empty, but we don't get to fill our tank by being selfish. It doesn't fill our tank. The tank gets filled by being selfless and other people giving into us. Have you heard of the book, The 5 Love Languages? It's an old book, been around forever. Read it in college. That was a long time ago, and it was not new then. That we each have the way that we receive love and we express love. Some of us have acts of service. That's how we primarily receive love. Some of it is gifts. Some of it is words. Some of it is touch. And I always forget the 5th one, but there's 5 of them. Time, quality time. I remember that one because that one's Becky's. Becky's is quality time. For me, quality time, we can sit and watching TV. Is that quality time for her? Nope. It's just not fair. I enjoy going out and working in the yard. Is that quality time for her? No. I don't like that. Come pick up sticks with me. That's a good time. She wants FaceTime. Look me in the eyes, face to face. That's quality time. I have to love her in her language. That's how she knows I love her. And we all have that. We all have how we receive love, how we get. It takes time and intention to do that. It takes effort because we typically don't receive love the way we want. We express it in our own language. So I could try and show love to Becky minus physical touch. I love hugs. I love holding hands. I love putting my arm around her. I love physical touch. It just really feeds my soul. And I'll hold her hand and I'll put my arm on her. We'll be in the kitchen and I'll rub her back and she's like, "Stop touching me." Like, "Oh, but I love you. I'm loving on you." And she doesn't receive it that way. So this love that we have, this expression, it's hard work. Is it any wonder that we as people, we're not getting our needs met, and so we go someplace else to try and meet our needs. And we move on to another relationship to try and meet our needs. And there's this constant struggle and desire for our needs to be met with love and for our tank to be filled. But the problem is that we look at love selfishly, and I want you to love me instead of trying to give it away. I look at this whole idea of Peter saying, love each other as brothers and sisters, and I go back to my brother, and I think that's what the church needs to be. The church needs to fight more. We need to fight for each other more. Because the thing about my brother that was interesting is while he would beat the tar out of me, nobody else could. I remember I hadn't seen the sensitive side of my brother before. It was a storm. We were out baling hay. It was my Grandpa Swank's house. This terrible storm came up, and some other boys were kind of picking on me because I was getting scared. We were a couple miles from the farm, and we're riding up on top of the hay, which is normally fun. But, man, I still remember that sky turning green. I remember colors like I'd never seen before. And I remember sitting on the top of the hay, and my brother's arms were around me, and he was telling all the other boys to shut up. Stop, and he was protecting me. I remember one time he yelled at a teacher for me because he thought the teacher, I was riding my bike to school. I fell off my bike. Guy clipped my front tire. I fell off. My glasses went flying, and the teacher drove by and ran over my glasses. So that was that close. And when my brother found out, my brother was driving at the time. My brother found out, went to the middle school. He was at the high school. He went to the middle school and found that teacher and let her know he was not happy. I remember rides in my brother's Mustang. brown Mustang. I don't remember what year it was, but I remember riding around in the Mustang. We had good times together. We loved each other. We fought with each other, but nobody else could. Church, this is the image I have in my mind that Peter's talking about. Love each other like brothers and sisters. Fight for each other. It should describe who we are, that we don't give up on one another. It's not just a verb, well, we love each other as brothers and sisters because I do this for you and you do this for me. That love becomes this transaction. That if I do this, you do this. And we kind of keep this ledger. Sometimes we do, don't we? Sometimes we keep a ledger, and sometimes we do it with our spouses. Sometimes we do it with our coworkers. Sometimes we do that. Well, I have done this, and we list this. And you've only done this, and I have this resentment now against you because the verb love, the actions are coming up short, and the ledger doesn't match. Every wedding I do, every premarital counseling I do, I tell every couple that love is not 50-50. It isn't. If love is 50-50, now there's a ledger. Now we start keeping score. Now we start trying to understand, okay, I've done this, you've done this, and it becomes this transaction of you owe me. In a relationship, love is 100%. You have to give everything that you have all of the time to that relationship. And you have to fight through the disappointments, and you have to fight through the frustrations, and you have to fight through all of the anger. You have to fight through these kind of things because I'm giving everything I can and everything I have to this marriage. If you have 50-50, now resentment can set in. You're not doing enough. You're not doing your part. You're not doing your fair share. What Peter is talking about is love like brothers and sisters. Love each other like brothers and sisters. Fight for one another. And this should be the description of who you are. This should be the description of the noun, I'm a follower of Jesus. I am a Christian. I love my brothers and sisters. And I fight with them, and I fight for them. Love can be messy. And if you've ever been in a relationship, is anybody in a relationship? You have a kid, you have a friend, you have a spouse, you have a neighbor. Man, it can be messy, and it can be hard, and it can be tough. It is easy to walk away. It's easy to quit in a marriage. It's easy to quit on somebody else because I've been offended, I've been hurt, my needs aren't being met. But the thing about, with Jeff and I and brothers and sisters is you don't have a choice. You're going to see each other at Thanksgiving. You got to buy each other a Christmas gift. You fight, but you got to come back together. Jeff and I shared a bedroom together. We had to find a way to get along. We had to find a way to coexist. Because otherwise we'd be miserable, and I'd probably be dead. I'm convinced he did try and kill me a couple times because I've heard that I snore. And I wake up not breathing. He'd have his hand plugging my nose and covering my mouth to stop me from snoring. Fight for one another. The Greek word here means loving one like a brother. That's what it means, love. Loving one like a brother. And having an earthly image of a brother, and some of you don't have brothers, and I understand that. Sister, friend, there is a choice that we make. That I'm going to fight for this relationship. I'm going to fight with you, and I'm going to fight for you. And I am committed to you because we're going to see each other on Sunday. Sometimes Christians really bother me, and I wonder, man, if we can't get along in this room, and we're all going to be in heaven, how in the world are we going to sit next to each other worshiping God if we can't get along here? Church, are you fighting for one another? You know that person that you look across the room and say, man, they irritate me. And I know there's people in this room that you irritate one another. I know some of you I irritate. I mean, I don't understand why I'm so good and perfect and nice. But I irritate some of you. I irritate my family. Will you fight for each other? Will you fight for your relationship? See, we earn the descriptions. We earn the descriptor. It says, love each other, the adjective that should describe believers and followers of Jesus. We earn that by our behavior. We earn that by the way we treat one another, by the way we express it in our verb and our action. We had, Becky and I worked at a Christian organization, and my boss and his boss were a couple of the fakest people around. They would talk about, well, it's all in the presentation. You don't have to really mean it. It's just how you present it. And all of us who worked with them knew that they were fake and knew because it was all about the presentation. It was all about my boss would talk about how he'd get a phone call, and he would tell us this as staff. I practice my happy voice. Even if I'm not, I would practice it so that you think I'm happy. And he would tell us this stuff. Like, we know who you are because of your actions. We earn our title. We earn the descriptor. They had earned the descriptor of being hypocrites. We as Christians earn the descriptor of if we are loving or not. If we love our brothers and sisters because it's genuine and it's real and we fight through things. We fight with each other, but we hug each other and we love each other and we care about one another. People outside the church are going to look inside the church and say, do they love each other as brothers and sisters, or are they fake and are they hypocrites? Because we can go out and we can whine and we can complain and we can gossip and we can slander and we can slam and we can say, well, this person does this and this person does that and this person and that. They're not a very loving church. They really don't like each other. Are you fighting for one another? It's easy to fight with. It's easy to fight with one another. Are you fighting for one another? Love each other as brothers and sisters. That's our call, church. That's what is to describe us. We say we're a Christian. Love your brothers and sisters. It ain't easy, but it's worth it. We're going to close with a song. How are you doing, church? I know I ask that question a lot at the end of our services. How are you doing? How are you really doing? You look across the room and you're saying, I've been carrying a grudge. And I've been letting that impact my relationship. I need to be better. I need to do better. We need to love each other, church. Let's pray. God, we thank you. We can get such a distorted view of what love means by social media, by TV shows, by movies, even by experience. That our experience can, whether we have parents that didn't love each other well, didn't love us well, we have broken relationships with our brothers and sisters, our blood brothers and sisters. That we can have a real distorted view of what it means to be descriptive of our life as a Christian, to love our brothers and sisters. God, help us to sort through all of that garbage. Help us to sort through all of the wrong messaging. Help us to sort through all of the stuff that doesn't matter. The commercials, everything that tells us to be selfish, to meet my needs, for me to be first. It's not what you've called us to. It's not what you expect of us. God, that fighting isn't bad. It strengthens the relationship, and we can fight through it. We can still love each other, and we can still defend each other, and still have the best interest of the other person in mind and at heart. It's got to help us as a family, as a church family, to do that. That while we may bug one another, we irritate each other, and we can get mad at each other, and we don't sometimes like what the other person is doing, but God, we would love each other as brothers and sisters, and that we would fight through that, and we would fight for them. So God, heal our hearts, heal our minds, help us to understand what it truly means to love each other as brothers and sisters, and that would be a descriptor of who we are as Blue Water Free Methodist Church, that we would love each other. We pray this in your name. Amen. Let's stand and let's sing this song together.